The gate had not been opened for company in 3 years. Bryn Kale knew this the way a man knows the weight of a habit, not by thinking about it, but by feeling it in his hands when he reached for the latch that evening and found the iron cold in a way it had no business being in early autumn. He had heard them before he saw them. 2 small voices, one higher than the other, and then a single adult voice cutting them quiet. He had gone to the window first, the way a man alone learns to do, and looked out through the warped glass at the lane below his gate. She was tall, green-skinned, broad-shouldered, with a child on her back in a wrap of faded cloth and another standing at her knee with his chin up and his eyes fixed on the farmhouse as though he were memorizing it. The orc woman carried a pack that would have broken a horse and showed no sign of it. Her jaw was set. She was not asking, not yet, she was simply standing at his gate the way a person stands when they have learned not to assume. Bryn had been a stonemason. He knew what it looked like when something had carried weight past its limit and was still holding. He went outside without his coat. She spoke before he reached the gate. Her voice was level, and she kept her eyes on his face the way people do when they need to see the no before it comes. "We have nowhere left," she said. "The valley turned us back at every door. I have coin. I ask only a night, a barn, a stable corner, anywhere with a roof. My children will not trouble you." Bryn looked at the boy, who had not flinched. He looked at the girl on her mother's back, who was watching him with enormous eyes. He looked at the pack that must have weighed as much as the boy did. He opened the gate without a word. She stepped through carefully, the way people step through a door when they are not sure it will stay open. He took the pack from her back before she could object. It was heavier than he had guessed. "Kitchen fire's still going," he said. "Children eat first." The boy's name was Davin. He was 9, with his mother's jaw and something watchful and careful behind his eyes that Bryn recognized from the mirror. The girl's name was Fun, and she was 6, and by the time Bryn had set out bread and cold ham and the heel of a bean soup he had been meaning to finish, she had already climbed onto the bench beside him and was looking at the soup with frank, undisguised hope. "It's good," Bryn told her. "Have it." She had it. Her mother sat across the table with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea and said nothing for a long moment. Then, "I am Sarah Vane. My husband was killed in the border war. 11 months ago." Bryn set the ladle down. "I'm sorry. We were moving west before the evacuation closed the road." She looked at her children, Davin eating steadily, Fun now halfway through the soup. Something moved across her face and settled. "We have been moving since. My betrothed died in that evacuation," Bryn said. He had not said it aloud in a very long time. The words felt strange and true at the same time. 11 years ago, now. We were 3 weeks from the wedding. Sarah Vane looked at him across the table for a long moment. She did not offer the usual words, the sorry, the what a shame. She simply looked at him as one person who knows the shape of a particular grief looks at another. "That is a long time to live in a house alone," she said at last. "It is," Bryn agreed. He gave them the spare room, the one with the 2 small beds he had built for a family he had stopped expecting to have. Fun was asleep before he had pulled the door to. Davin sat up with his boots still on until Sarah said his name once, quietly, and then he let himself lie down. Bryn sat by the kitchen fire for a long while after. In the morning he found Sarah at the edge of the yard, standing with her arms folded, studying the collapsed section of his barn wall with the particular focus of a person doing calculations in her head. "The lintel shifted," she said, without turning. "3rd course from the ground, the footing soft. That's what drove the lean." She turned then, and caught the look on his face. "My father built walls. I grew up reading stone." Bryn looked at the wall. He had been staring at that collapse for 3 years. He had not known what drove the lean. "I can take a look at the footing today," she said, "if you have tools." He had tools. By mid-morning she had opened the soft footing and shown him exactly what had happened, a section of clay soil that held water, working at the base course every winter until it gave. She explained it plainly, the way a person explains something to someone they expect to understand, and Bryn found himself asking questions and getting real answers, and the sun moved across the yard without either of them noticing. Davin worked beside them. He handed stone, swept rubble, fetched the level when his mother called for it, and at no point did he complain. Fun brought water at intervals with the deep seriousness of a person who has decided this is her responsibility. At noon Sarah sat on the low wall and ate the bread and cold meat Bryn had left out without being asked, and he sat beside her, and they talked about stone, the kind of stone that holds, the kind that only looks like it holds, the way a footing set shallow will always fail in time. She spoke about walls she had built in the Eastern Highlands and a garrison repair she had overseen before the war, a double-width curtain wall that had held a final siege against odds that still embarrassed the stone, she said, and something in her voice when she said it was warm and exact and full of a pride she had not expected to feel again. Bryn did not ask why she had become a warrior instead of staying a builder. He had his own reasons for things he had set down and never explained. He thought she probably knew that he was not asking. "You could stay a week," he said, when the afternoon had gone quiet. "Until you've had time to plan the next step properly. The barn wall needs that footing reset regardless." She looked at him with the same measuring look she had turned on the wall. "We would not be charity," she said. "The wall is work. I have worked longer days than this for nothing." "I know," Bryn said. "I'm not offering charity. I'm offering time." She looked at her children, Davin resetting the lowest course with a careful hand, Fun sitting in the rubble with a small flat stone she was lining up with other small flat stones in a structure of her own. She looked at the farmhouse. She looked at the fire Bryn had kept going since last night, the smoke rising straight in the still air. "A week," she said. "The wall took 4 days. 3 meters across, 2 high, dry stone, with a new lintel cut from the elm that had come down in last spring's wind." Sarah worked with the focused, unhurried speed of someone who has done this so many times that the decisions live in her hands. She reset the footing with a rubble drain that Bryn recognized immediately as the correct solution to every damp footing he had puzzled over in 40 years of building. On the 3rd day she showed Davin how to read the plumb and the boy had it in an hour. On the evening of the 4th day they stood back from the finished wall and Bryn could find nothing to say that was equal to it. "It would stand for 100 years. My father would have approved of this stone," Sarah said. "Your father knew his work," Bryn said. She turned and looked at the farmhouse, and then at the yard, and at the gate down the lane, and then back at the farmhouse again. Bryn let her look. "There is a section of the kitchen chimney," he said carefully, "that has needed repointing for 2 winters. I keep putting it off." Sarah made a sound that was not quite a laugh but had the shape of one. "That would take a day. The gate post is leaning. That is another morning. 2 mornings, if the post socket has rotted." She paused. "And the northwest paddock fence is down. I saw it when we came in." "I saw it," Bryn said. "I keep meaning to get to it." "Fence posts in stone-rich ground are 3 days of work," Sarah said. She was looking at the farmhouse again. "Closer to 4, for a paddock that size." Bryn nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." They stood in the last of the evening light with the new barn wall solid and square behind them, and neither of them said the thing they were thinking, and both of them knew perfectly well what the other was thinking, and that was all right. Fun came barreling across the yard at this point with a flat stone in each hand and a declaration that she had found the best building stones in the entire farm and her mother should come and look immediately. Sarah looked at Bryn. Something in her face had shifted from the measuring calculation of the past 4 days into something quieter and more unguarded. "Let me see these stones," she said, and let herself be led away by the hand. Davin came and stood beside Bryn at the wall, the way a boy stands beside a man he has decided to learn something from. "She built the Callow Ford garrison wall," Davin said, not looking at him. "The one in the war. She built it before my father died and it saved the whole corps. She never told anyone she built it." Bryn looked at him. "She thinks no one would believe her," Davin said. "She's wrong. You can see it in how she does it." "You're right," Bryn said. "You absolutely can." Davin nodded, satisfied, and went to join his mother and his sister among the good flat stones. By the end of the week the chimney was repointed and drawing clean, and the gate post was plumb in a new stone socket, and the northwest paddock fence was 2 days into being something better than it had ever been. Sarah worked in the mornings and spent the afternoons teaching Davin the dry stone principles her father had passed to her, not from a book, but from standing beside someone who knew. Fun had commandeered a corner of the barn and was building a wall of her own from the rubble pile, small and crooked and deeply serious. On the 8th evening, Sarah sat at Bryn's kitchen table after the children were asleep and told him about the evacuation road, plainly, not asking for anything, the way people tell things when they have stopped being afraid of how they land. Her husband had been a clan soldier. He had gone back for a family whose wagon had broken down on the eastern road. He had not come back. She had waited at the crossing until the Corps closed it. Bryn told her about the morning he had been given the message, a clerk at the post, a folded paper, the cold official language that has no room in it for the thing it is actually saying. He told her about the house he had started building for two and finished alone. I kept everything ready, he said. He looked at the table. The spare room. The second beds. I built them eventually. I don't know why. Sarah was quiet for a moment. I think you know why, she said. He thought about that for a while. You could stay, he said. It came out without a plan behind it, which was probably the right way for it to come out. Not as work. Not as a week. If you wanted to. There is room. The paddock will hold your clan animals if you send for them. And that chimney will need watching next winter. The east side of the flue is not finished the way I would have finished it. No, Sarah agreed, it's not. I noticed. You would be doing me a service. Bryn, she said, and the way she said his name, level, direct, the way she said everything, made him look up. I am not looking for a reason. I am deciding whether this is a thing that should be. He nodded. Is it? She looked around the kitchen, at the fire, at the two small mugs still drying from supper, at the door behind which her children were asleep in beds that had been built and kept ready by a man who had not known who he was keeping them for. Fun has named her corner of the barn, Sarah said. She has told me the name twice now and asked me to remember it. What is the name? Home, Sarah said. She said it simply, and Bryn found he had nothing to add to it, and so he said nothing, and outside the window the autumn dark was quiet and full of stars, and the new barn wall stood solid in the yard, and the gate at the end of the lane was still open from when he had not closed it, 3 weeks ago now, without thinking. By the first frost, there were 4 pairs of boots at the kitchen door. Bryn had not counted the years since the war took what it took from him. He had stopped counting years the winter after he finished the house for 2. But he counted those boots, his own worn pair, and Sarah's broad working ones, and Davin's, and the small, battered, absolutely non-negotiable pair that Fun refused to remove until her mother said the word. He counted them on a cold morning with the fire going and the smell of porridge in the air and 2 voices bickering cheerfully in the room down the hall, and he thought, this is what the house was built for. All of it. Even the weight. He put the porridge on and called them in.